I'm here with Bob Camp, a friend of mine from years ago. We worked in film together. I currently freelance at the Mill as an animator. Welcome, Bob.
Thanks. Hey, good to see you.
All right, back again. So Bob's going to tell us a little bit about how he started in this industry. I know anybody who's watching this might wonder how you get started or wonder how you get to where Bob is and where he's been in the field. So if you don't mind, Bob, tell us maybe how you got started in this whole art and animation thing.
Well, I never intended to get into animation, but I started off as a caricature artist and portrait artist working at Six Flags Over Texas. And then I traveled around. I had a VW bus with a dog, and I lived in it, and I traveled around and did the rodeo circuit doing caricatures and portraits. I ended up going to Provincetown, Massachusetts for a couple of summers, and I met a cartoonist named Gary Hallgren, and he convinced me to come to New York and helped me get a job at Marvel Comics, where I met Larry Hama, the great Larry Hama, and he sort of took me under his wing and showed me how to draw comic books, and I worked in the bullpen there doing art corrections on the books and movie parodies for Crazy Magazine. I was the sort of low-rent Mort Drucker for Crazy Magazine, and then ended up doing the Nam, Conan, Bizarre Adventures, Savage Tales of Conan, a lot of comic titles, mostly ones without guys in long underwear, which I was happy about. And did that. Then I started working on a show called Thundercats. I'm sure you heard of it.
I remember that greatly, yeah.
Yeah, it dates me. But I worked on Thundercats and did design work on that. Drew a lot of the bad guys on that show, and then worked on Silverhawks, Tiger Sharks, Mini Monsters, Street Frogs, a bunch of the shows. And then they went under, and I moved to LA and started working in animation. Met a lot of great artists there, and ended up leaving that and starting a studio called Spumco with a guy named John Kay. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Right, that's where I know most of your work, or at least at that
yeah,
era.
Yeah. And then we did Ren and Stimpy. Nickelodeon picked up the show. Still surprised, but we did that, and that was a big success. And I guess at one point it was the highest rated show on cable TV.
Right, I remember.
Yeah, and when we started Ren and Stimpy, there was like 4 of us or 5 of us, and everybody had to do everything. Like I painted the backgrounds on the pilot because no one else knew how to paint. So, you know, that's how that ended up happening. And we wrote them as well. So suddenly I'm a writer, and we had to do voices. So suddenly I'm in SAG, you know. So just simply through the necessity of having to get it done and doing it ourselves, I learned to do all these different things.
Right. Would you say that an approach like that, to where it's not so saturated with many, many people working on the same thing, that you maybe reach the creative goal a little bit more, less diluted, I'd say? Because that show was kind of intense.
It was.
Like
you know,
yeah.
I've been really lucky to do what I've done, you know, and things are so structured now. Like I work at Nickelodeon now, and the way things are at Nickelodeon now is so completely different. Like we had a lot of freedom. We got away with murder. I mean, you've seen the show.
Right.
We did a lot of crazy stuff, and so Nickelodeon was just sort of clueless as to what we were doing,
right.
You know, and so the show ended up what it is, and it wouldn't be that way now. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
And one tier beyond that is going from a show, as we said, that you had so much say.
Yeah.
What was it like going to, say, storyboarding for a larger house, like where I met you, Blue Sky? It was
Blue Sky, completely different. Features and TV are so different, because TV you gotta knock it out. You gotta do it quick, and you know you just gotta get it into the production.
right.
You know, and features, as you know, they spend a lot of time and a lot of money, and they rewrite, redraw. So you know, you could redraw the same sequence 12 times, and then they'll give it to somebody else and they'll redraw it, and pretty soon nothing you've drawn is in the movie. Right. So you know, you never know. It's just this giant process. You know, it's like you go from being, you know, a couple of beavers building a dam to being an ant in a
right.
tremendous anthill. So, but you know, there's rewards in both, I think. That's one thing I really liked about working at Blue Sky and big studios like that, is just the massive talent, like you have here. You have all these really talented
It's starting to feel
people,
like that here.
and you absorb it.
Right.
Like I used to hang out watching Mike DeFeo
Right.
in the sculpting,
Right.
in the model department, and just go sit in there and watch them.
Yeah, it rubs
How
off.
do they do that?
Right. I mean, that's how I met you, moseying around.
Yeah.
My buddy used to call it I was fighting crime. Gaining knowledge.
Gaining knowledge and stealing stuff.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's cool. It's a good thing. I mean, I've had a million jobs, worked at every kind of art job you can imagine, and I've taken something away from every job I've had that I use to this day, you know. But that goes back to stealing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, borrowing.
Borrowing, yeah, it's borrowing. I'll give it back someday. But
yeah, on your blog I noticed, and this is what I really like about your work, is that a lot of the examples that you'll use, even in some of your your lessons and whatnot that you were posting, you will use a character design that's a little generic, maybe like a Marvel comic book guy or something from another cartoon. You're not always too interested in making something extremely unique.
Yeah.
All the time, but at the same time, you were able to emulate a lot of these styles and really, refine them to a point where it's really.
That's. That goes back to me doing a bunch of different kinds of jobs and being lucky. Like when I started working at Marvel, I was working in the bullpen with all these great artists. I didn't know how to draw comic books. I didn't have any idea. But I had to fix comic books when there were mistakes, so I had to copy the styles of different artists. Right. So I learned to ape what they were doing, and then I got a job as an inker, and I was inking John Buscema. And if anybody knows comics, John Buscema was one of the greatest comic artists that ever lived, and I was his inker. And Michael Golden, of course, great right. Michael Golden. I inked his comic The Nam some and awesome. Did some covers for that. So I learned through working on different stuff. So, when you see the stuff, it's sort of what it needs to be and nothing more.
At anywhere I work, I try and push drawing, even if it's very simple, because it's almost like a different language. The more you spread that, it's like a language, and even if you do it rudimentary, I think it's a language that people should understand.
Yeah, so. Drawing's never going to go away, right. I think. And I storyboard now on a Cintiq tablet, but I can't do it quickly. It's funny, you think something like that, this technological tool, would make your work faster. It slows me right down because I get like, ooh, a Photoshop, I can shade, right. I can color right. this, or I get too precious with the art, when really my favorite thing to storyboard with is Post-its with a ballpoint pen, yep. And just draw little and get the...
I draw, little is
little,
fine,
yeah, because then, layout's easier when you draw small.
Right.
Instead of, and you're a lot less likely to do a lot of detail, so.
How would you say, is there any transition that you've had between doing layout for a 2D animated bit, or say some of the layout you've done in the 3D end of things? Have you noticed anything different?
The show I'm working on now, parts of it are 2D and parts of it are 3D. And I don't notice so much in the style of what I'm doing, but the cutting is different, obviously, because I can't move around something if it's flat, right. And I can't do down shots on 2D characters and stuff like that, so you have to take that kind of stuff into consideration. But honestly, it really doesn't affect what I do that much, and if it does, they'll just say, you can't do that, so I don't do it, I figure it's somebody else's job to tell me what I can't do,
right. And my final question, what the heck was it? Is it true that the more that you lean towards the insanity end of things, the more the creativity scale goes up?
It happened to me so long ago, the crossing that line, I don't remember.
Okay.
But one thing I do know is that I've been trying my whole life to be normal, and I've kind of given up.
I know the feeling.
Because it doesn't pay off, and I get stressed out about it,
right.
and I feel like a big failure all the time. But I'm excellent at being me.
All right.
So that's not that hard to do.
Right.
In fact, I can't avoid it. And if it pisses somebody off, well, it pisses them off. What can I say?
Yeah.
That's life.
All right, well, thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you.
Great. Cheers to that.
Cheers. Uh-oh. I think we need some more wine in there.
All right,
Thanks.
Let's go get it.
Cheers.
See ya.